Yo and hello everybody, Mike here, baseball collector. Happy Thursday to everybody. The weekend's almost here. You almost made it through another week. Today is going to be kind of a double dip of fun tonight. I am going to show a few cards that I got back from a PSA submission and go over that, talk about that a little bit, and then I'm also going to show a few cards for a contest response for my good buddy John over at Wade Boggs Fan. So that'll be fun. Yeah, let's just get right into it. I don't have a whole lot else to say, but show some cards. What John wanted us to do, he's reached 500 subscribers. Congratulations, John. And I'll put a link down to his channel below. You can check it out. Go join the contest. But I thought it's always fun to reminisce. And he wanted us to put cards that, not necessarily that we're going to be like coffin cards. I don't have any cards that are coffin cards. If I die, my wife can sell everything she wants. But cards that I don't plan on ever selling. There are a few cards that I own that have special meaning to me and highly unlikely that I would ever get rid of them. And I got 4 of them here that I'm going to show and talk about why they mean so much. And I've shown this card before. In fact, I've shown all these cards before, but you know, hearing the stories is good that goes with cardboard. The first one is this 1960 Topps Carl Yastrzemski. And the reason this card matters so much to me is it's the first vintage card I ever owned. I wish I could remember exactly what year it was. It was probably 10 ish years old, 11, something like that. Super young for sure. I bought it from a guy who lived down the street from me. And ultimately, you can see how old the slab is. I sent this in. It's one of the first cards I sent in to get graded. And just wanted to get it encapsulated, mainly to protect it. I didn't really care what grade it came back. It came back a 3, which was fine. But it was that first thing. And I remember buying it and asking my mom for the money and her thinking I was crazy. I can't even remember exactly how much I spent on it, but at the time, for sure, it was the most I'd ever spent on cards, on any card, for sure. But it was that first vintage card, and Yastrzemski at the time was either wrapping up his career. You know, his last year was 83, I suppose. So he was either finishing up his career or whatever, and the idea of getting a rookie card of his just, you know, you bet, you know, I never thought I'd own a card like this. How to dream as a kid. So that's why that one's important to me and why I'll never sell it. Not long after that, and again, memory is a little hazy about timing of all this stuff. If I'd have known how important all this stuff would be to me years and years and decades later, I would have probably been a little more keen to remember when this was. But there's another guy down the street, same direction down the street as the guy I bought the Yastrzemski from, and he was an older I say older. This was maybe a year after I bought the Yastrzemski. This guy was probably in his 20s or whatever, but he had a collection of cards, and he literally had all of these cards, these amazing vintage cards, in a trash bag, a black trash bag. I do remember that. I remember going to his front door and him bringing out this giant black trash bag and saying, hey, you know, I kind of went through it and picked out some cards that I wanted to have. I want to say I gave him $20, $30. You know, it wasn't a lot of money. And I regret just not buying the whole bag. Like because there was cards from 67, 68, and 69 Topps is what it was full of. I mean, there were, I'm sure I saw Johnny Bench rookies and Nolan Ryan rookies and Tom Seaver rookies and Rod Carew rookies, and I didn't grab those cards. The first card, or not the first, I bought a Pete Rose card because at the time in the mid 80s, you know, Pete Rose was akin to being the greatest player that ever was, you know. So I bought a 67 Pete Rose, I believe, and that one's still just in my collection. I still have it. But the 2 cards that I've had slabbed since then are this 1969 Topps Hank Aaron, and the cards were in a trash bag, for crying out loud. So the fact that I even got 3s on these is fantastic. Like, I got a 3 on this one, and then one of the other cards. I bought 3 cards in total, I believe. And the other one was this Mickey Mantle. And at the time, this was my very first Mickey Mantle, 1968 Topps. And man, I was the hero of the yard, the schoolyard, bringing a Mickey Mantle, vintage Mickey Mantle to school with me. And this one actually came back a 3.5. And I got these graded more recently because you can tell they're a lighthouse flip. But to have these 2 cards for, gosh, since the 80s and mid 80s, and to keep them and then one day be able to encapsulate and preserve them in the condition that they're in, I'm just thrilled to death to have that, to have these, period. And yeah, so these were just 2 old cards that I bought from that guy from the trash bag. Like, that's just the crazy. I'd love to have bought the whole if I'd have known, right? If we all would have known. We all have those stories of, if only I had more money in that moment, or if I wasn't just a kid, or whatever. Then there's this card. This is the last one I'm going to talk about for that. Cards I would never sell. And that's this one right here. And it's a 1954 Bowman Phil Rizzuto. This is one I actually got slabbed relatively recently, within the last couple years. And this one's incredibly special to me because it's the first playing days Hall of Fame autograph I ever got. And my dad got this for me. He went to the card shop, the local card shop, back in the day. Probably got this again in the mid 80s when Phil Rizzuto was a color commentator for the New York Yankees, or helped doing their broadcast, play-by-play guy, whatever he was. And yeah, so he was up in the booth with them. I've told that story so many times of just what my dad did in baseball and how it just kept my interest in the game. And he got this card signed by Phil Rizzuto. It's a 54 Bowman, obviously. It's you can see there, signed in ink, or just ballpoint pen is what I meant. And I sent this in to get slabbed up, again, just to preserve it and encapsulate. I have quite a few of those that my dad got for me over the years that I want to do this with. Again, just to protect them. I don't care that the card's a 3. I don't care that the auto is an 8. I mean, I graded them just because why not? But the reality is, this is something I would never sell. It would always be a reminder of being a kid. And my dad giving these cards to me. I got a Killebrew, and I've got some Reggie Jacksons, and some just cards that he got along the way signed by players. And what a great foresight for him to do that. I can only imagine my dad going into a card shop knowing nothing about cards and really not a ton about sports, ironically, and, hey, do you have any cards of Phil Rizzuto? I mean, I could just imagine what that conversation was like. And anyway, love it, absolutely love it. My dad has no idea what he launched me into by getting me this card back in the day, in terms of how much I love autographs. And this is probably a big reason why, that my dad, you can get a card signed by the player. How cool is that? Just, it's funny how we start. And so that's why these all mean so much to me, these cards, those 4 that I showed you. I'll leave those 2 up just because they're great. Now I'm going to get into the PSA submission that I did. This is a submission that I gave to JT, Triple Crown 24 Sports Cards, through the Myco/JT Facebook group. And these were sent off Labor Day 2020. So late September, probably they went off in early October to PSA. So we're coming up on, tomorrow's October 1st, so almost a year door to door. I bet it was a little more than a year door to door for sure, from when they left my house to getting here. And so that just tells you, it seems like PSA is getting caught up. Last week they graded somewhere around 195,000 cards, 196,000, something like that. The week before they graded 191,000 plus cards. So they are grading cards at a furious pace. And that's good to see, because they can finally start catching up. I mean, I have, I think, 2 or 3 more orders with JT up there with cards, so, or in other group, bulk orders that are still up there. These are cards that I sent in because, again, I try to stay ahead of the game a little bit, and there's a player that I truly believe is going to get in the Hall of Fame on his first ballot. And so cards that I like to have. I already have his rookie, but I got Adrian Beltre's. This is his last Topps card, so this will be part of that set registry. I think Beltre is one of those guys that I may try to get, because I loved him, watching him play so much. I may try to get his entire run of base Topps cards in PSA slabs. This one came back a 9. I sent 2 of them because the idea is if I send 2, maybe one of them will get a 10. Unfortunately, this one got a 9, and so did the second one. It got a 9. So I got 2 9s on that, which is mildly disappointing. I mean, it's a pretty new card. I have like 20 of these, literally, so maybe I can find another one to send off. But I wouldn't do it under the current grading scenario of the cost, because this is not an expensive card whatsoever. But at the time we did this a year ago, the cost of grading was, I don't know, $10 or $12 a card, so it really wasn't, you know, crazy. But it certainly is now. So there's those 2, and along with that I had 2 of these. I just love these. I just love the way they look. And so I had 2 of this one. I had the Beltre Sapphire, and I just thought, and I turned out to be right as I look at these in person, that these sapphires just pop, and they really pop in a slab. I mean, this just looks so good. The sapphire, this one got a 9. Again, I sent 2 of them because I had 2 of them, and I thought, well, if I send 2, maybe I'll get a 10 on one of them. And sure enough, I did. The first one was a 9. This one was a 10. And I have spent about 20 minutes with these side by side, literally right next to each other. Not a darn thing that I can tell different. And that's kind of the funny part about grading, is you never know what really makes a 10, what makes a 9. The 9 looks just as good as the 10. I couldn't really tell you the difference. Obviously there is a difference somewhere, somehow, at the microscopic level potentially, but there's got to be something different between them. One's a 9, one's a 10. But, you know, I'm happy to have a 10, but that's why I always gravitate towards 9s on modern cards. Like, you can pay, you know, this one's probably 5 or 6 times the cost of a 9. You know, if the difference in the way the cards look is so insignificant, why not just buy the 9? That's kind of, it's, I can't remember if it's Elite Co. or, you know, who says this, but it's, you know, collect 9s and sell 10s. So that might actually be what I do with this. I haven't decided. I just love it so much. I may hold on to it for a little while, see if it gets in the Hall of Fame. That card will be worth more. But I have 2 of them, so I don't need 2 of them forever in my collection, nor do I need 2 of the base cards. So figure out what to do with those, and that is it for today. Hope you enjoyed the stories. Thanks for checking it out. Congrats again to John for 500 subs. We'll catch you guys soon. Keep collecting.